Hi, I'm Marilyn. I am Jerry and Marilyn's oldest daughter, and I live in Minneapolis.
Marilyn and I were best friends for 19 years.
Hi, this is Anna, just wanting to share some wonderful memories about Marilyn.
I grew up with the Veldofs. Gerald and I were like 3 years old when we became friends, and the Veldofs lived one house away, and their home was like my second home.
My name is Annie Leverett. Marilyn was my father's cousin.
Okay, so, this is a video about my grandmother who sadly died almost exactly a year ago.
I met Marilyn after she was already ill.
I was a friend of Lynn's for many, many years, and I have some wonderful memories of her.
Hi, this is Sandy Hughes. I married into the Veldof family in 1986, and Aunt Lynn and I bonded right away as two very practical New Yorkers.
I'm Annika Veldof. I'm not her granddaughter.
And I'm Lynn's brother-in-law. Neighbor of the Veldofs.
I'm Aunt Lynn's nephew, Michael, and there's no way I can do justice to such a wonderful aunt, Aunt Lynn.
So what does it feel like to be married for 50 years?
50 years?
Yeah.
Just overnight.
Overnight.
I will never get over how she put up with me for 50 years.
Well, how did you put up with him for 50 years?
One day at a time.
Yeah.
A lot of patience and laughing. The question is, how did you put up with her?
Yeah.
2 days at a time.
All right.
That was easy, Kelsey. Put up with her.
You got it.
The other way around was difficult.
My mother was a very generous person.
First of all, she is so thoughtful and so smart and so practical too. It's just amazing. She's always thinking about everybody else.
I can't really adequately convey what an enormous influence the Veldofs had on me.
I would like to tell you what Marilyn meant to me and how she helped me become a better person.
I'm sure that many of you also have been touched by Marilyn's compassion and warmth in your lives.
My mother was an interesting person. On the one hand, she was very rational, very practical, very buttoned up, kind of that English background of hers really came through ancestrally. But on the other hand, she was an extremely generous and kind person. So it was a little odd sometimes, I think, when people met her, they thought, she's kind of a little bit standoffish, very funny, great sense of humor. But I think sometimes came off a little different than what she really was. Underneath, just a very, very kind person, very generous. She was always helping people, always just going out of her way to make other people's lives easier.
Here are some of the lasting lessons that I learned from Aunt Lynn. When it comes to traveling, September is the best month to go to Europe because the student trips haven't started yet. And if you go to Italy, be sure to see Venice because there's no other place like it in the world. Long before there was Facebook, Aunt Lynn realized that people's views of the world depended on what they were and were not hearing and seeing in the sources of news that they had. When it came to finances, Aunt Lynn believed in saving for a rainy day, but she reminded us that sometimes you've got to face up to the fact that the rainy day is here and dip into that money. When it comes to relationships, be sure to have some younger friends as you get older. Not only do they give you a different point of view, but they can help you with things that you can no longer reach or lift.
We laughed where we couldn't stop laughing. And that reminds me of a couple of times. We went to Ocala once, and coming back on 40 minutes, we spoke nonstop. And because we did, we missed our turn to come back to the villages. So where did we end up? Back in Ocala. We looked at each other and started laughing so hard that we didn't know how we made it back safely because we couldn't stop laughing. Then another time we were in Bob Evans, and I said to Marilyn, look at that table there. That'll be us someday. There were two little old ladies, about 95 years old, bent over, gray hair. So Marilyn turned around and looked. Well, I thought she was going to choke on her food. She started laughing so hard. She looked at me, and then of course I started laughing. Well, we couldn't stop, and I really thought the restaurant was going to throw us out.
Mostly, though, I remember her infectious laugh and her sense of humor. My mom and dad were friends with Lynn and Jerry, and one of their regulars for 20 years was the Saturday night card game. As a child, I remember Mrs. Veldof laughing like crazy at these card games. I remember Mr. Veldof's thunderous voice echoing through the house. I'd be up in my room and it would literally break through the door. I remember, even though I was a kid, Mr. Veldof saying, "God damn it, Lynn, it's not your turn to take a card." And Mrs. Veldof replying to that with this laughter like she was a teenager. And saying, "It's my turn, you took your turn." Just laughing. And I'd be up in my room hearing all this. And then my mother would start to laugh and my father would start laughing, and the whole house would be full of laughter, and that was just wonderful. Those Saturday night card games were part of their routine.
I remember I was cooking the first turkey dinner for Marilyn and the whole family, and I thought, who better to call than Marilyn? So I called Marilyn in Florida from Minnesota, and I said, "Marilyn," and she said, "Well, did you get a butter bowl?" And I said, "What? Did you get a butter bowl?" I said, "No, I didn't get a butterball turkey." And Marilyn answered, "Well, you should have gotten a butter bowl." That made me laugh.
She was responsible for the first time I ever had sugar. She gave me like a pudding, a chocolate pudding, when I was like 1 or 2. And my parents didn't wanted to wait till I was older to give me sugar. But she gave me it while they were gone, and I had like a look on, like a really good look on my face that was salivating, and I had putting all over my face, and my parents walked in with putting all over my face, and I just had and she just had a really smug look on her face. So yeah.
I remember on one occasion, Mrs. Veldof was laughing so hard that she had to go to the bathroom. And I came downstairs into the kitchen to see what was so funny, because she was laughing hysterically, Mr. Veldof was laughing hysterically, my parents were laughing hysterically. She went into the bathroom and closed the door. And I remember I found it particularly funny to hear her in the bathroom laughing and laughing uncontrollably. I don't know what Mr. Veldof had said, but obviously it was something. It was usually he was the one, the instigator, that made everybody laugh. But anyway, it's the laughing and the humor that I remember most about her.
Una voce, una chitarra, poche nuvole, ecco qua più per fare una serenata, per sospirare amore chiaro piano, parole rosse per una innamorata, ti voglio bene, tanto tanto bene, lontana te non posso più campare. Una voce, una chitarra, poche nuvole, è come dolce che sta serenata, a bocca tua si accosta più vicino. E tutta stringa a me più appassionata, con la chitarra e non felice voce, con te vicini canta e so felice. Amore, non posso più scordarmi te.
My parents really instilled in me a love of travel. They took my sister and me on numerous adventures with them all over Europe. And got to learn so much and see so many cultures. And lots of museums and lots of churches.
We did many things together. We traveled, we went to the casino, we shopped, we had many good times, and we talked sometimes nonstop.
My husband Mike and I visited with Aunt Lynn and Uncle Jerry every year, first in New Jersey and then in Florida. And when we lived in France for 3 years, Aunt Lynn and Uncle Jerry came and visited us, and the three of us went up in a balloon at the Chateau de Chantilly.
The Veldofs took me to Europe in the summer of 1985. I remember when we were in London, Mrs. Veldof wanted me to buy a tweed jacket, and London was the last leg of our trip. We had gone to Italy, we'd gone to Switzerland, we'd gone to France. Now we were in England, and we were in London, and I was running out of money, so I couldn't buy this tweed jacket. And I tried it on, and she thought it looked very good on me. And she offered to put it on her credit card, and I was, for some reason, very uncomfortable with that. And I said no. I didn't have to have the jacket. And we went back to the hotel, and the next day she presented me with that jacket. She'd gone back and she'd gotten it for me. So, yeah, it meant so much to me that she had gone back to get that. That at the time I cried. That was very thoughtful of them. I could be a thoughtless teenager, but I remember at that time I cried. I'm so thankful that she did that, and that must, I'm sure, meant something to her.
Just very happy memories for all the Hugheses of vacations together, particularly at Ocean City, Maryland. Every year for at least a decade or more, the Hugheses and the Veldofs would meet at Ocean City, Maryland. Very happy memories there. Uncle Jerry taught me how to body surf. Aunt Lynn would make her famous lasagna, still legendary in the Hughes family. And then there are those unforgettable Thanksgivings. Aunt Lynn, thank you for hosting.
One day, Marilyn called me and I was pregnant with Jacob, and she said, "Anna, I want to take you somewhere." And I said, "Really?" And she said, "Yes, but I'm not going to tell you where, but you have to tell me yes or no right now, and it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity." So I said, "Okay, yes." And so Marilyn took me to Las Vegas, which was fabulous. And our first night, she wanted to start gambling right away. I think it was about her third one. She only put in nickel slots, and she put in a nickel slot and she pulled it. And out came 3 bright red 7s, the bells and whistles started going off, and men in suits came out, and Marilyn was overjoyed. She just had this huge smile. She won $3,000 on that pull. And she said, oh, if I had only put in $1, I would have had $12,000. That was really fun. So we kept on gambling, and sometimes I'd be very tired, and Marilyn would hand me, she'd say, here, Anna, here's a 20. Just stay with me one more time. I put in 20, out came 200, and I went upstairs. This was the last night we were there. It was about 11 o'clock at night, and I waited for her, and I waited for her. Pretty soon I had started nodding off, woke up at 1 o'clock, and there was no Marilyn. I nodded off again, fell asleep. 3 o'clock, no Marilyn. I was getting worried by then, thinking, where is Marilyn? And then at 4 in the morning, she comes in with this Cheshire cat grin, fanning $100 bills. She had won over 4,000 more dollars playing. She said, let's go to Mamma Mia and let's have a steak dinner.
In the 32 years I worked at the state library, I worked for or with a dozen odd supervisors, bureau heads, and state librarians. Marilyn was one of the very best. It was a pleasure working in the Library Development Bureau then. Interesting work, good coworkers, and an atmosphere of trust and collegiality. I remember learning our first computers. Marilyn was way ahead of us. She'd already been schlepping an Apple around teaching librarians how to use it. How far we came after those first little IBMs with the primitive email, pilot shell accounts as I recall, to those servers, networks, and online catalogs of later days.
My mother loved technology. Back in the 70s, she was one of the very first people who brought home a computer. So back in those days, she was the head of development for the state of New Jersey's library systems all across the state. And she was the person who needed to go out and figure out what was the next new thing. What was the next thing that they needed development money for, that they needed to invest in. So very early on in the computer revolution, she was right on top of it. And she brought home one of the first Macintosh computers, one of the ones in the box, that box setup. And then very soon after bought us an Apple IIe. And now that I think about it and I look back, I think she was really important and me to kind of show her how kids would work with the technology and what we might do, and how she leveraged that in the library systems in New Jersey.
Of course, she was a librarian, a very good one, accomplished one. And she nurtured a love of reading in her children, and certainly in me. And she used to get all of us Hughes boys just the most wonderful books each year. And one was a special treasure, the Golden Book of Dinosaurs. And believe it or not, it was almost poetic. And I have happy memories of reading that book to this day. And she continued the tradition with my children. She got us a pop-up book. It was the night before Christmas, and we always remember it so fondly.
When I lost both my parents in a short time span, Marilyn was an anchor and a comfort to me. Later on, when I experienced a serious health challenge, Marilyn stayed in touch and supported me. In later years, after my parents were gone, Marilyn would send me a birthday card every year on my birthday. This was something I looked forward to quite a bit.
I've always been impulsive. I make decisions without thinking, and Marilyn taught me to look before I leap. We were friends during the illness and the death of my husband, and she helped me so many times to look at things in a logical way instead of an emotional way.
My tribute to Lynn is from the time I was a freshman in high school. I had my first history paper due on the colonial history of the United States, and since it was my first semester, I was hesitant to write it because I had never written an academic paper before, and I wanted to get a good grade on it. I was sitting at my parents' kitchen table struggling to come up with the right approach when Lynn came over and asked what I was doing. I explained that I was having problems with my paper. She then asked where my outline was. I told her I didn't have one. She replied that any paper requires an outline. Over the next half an hour, she helped me develop one. After the outline was done, I had no problem finishing the paper. I went on to receive a high mark on the completed report. Since that time, I've written many reports and proposals, and I'll always be thankful to Lynn for first introducing the outline to me.
She was a good friend in every way. When I started my business, she came down to help paint the store, and Saturday nights we had some crazy card games. They were always a lot of fun. A little yelling, a little laughing. It was nice. And then we had our annual hayride every summer with the children, which was always very nice. And a lot of backyard picnics and get-togethers with the families. And Lynn would always make a cheesecake or lemon meringue pie, and they were Keith's favorites. So many nice memories, and I truly miss her. I really do. Just a nice person and a very good friend.
But the one thing that I will remember particularly about Mrs. Veldof, about Lynn, was how much of a cheerleader she was for me when I wrote my book, Cavell Avenue Memoirs. She not only read it, she wrote and sent me detailed notes and edits. And I'm not talking just a few pages, I'm talking a lot. And she also, I remember, solicited sales for my book when it was finally published, which meant a lot to me.
Mrs. Veldof gave me really my first commercial landscape jobs. It was a career that I was going into, and I was still in grammar school. She entrusted me to build a big railroad-tie landscape bed in their backyard, and I sodded an island in the front of the house for them. And even though I was only in the 8th grade, she trusted me with that project. I think I was a little mature for my age, and she respected that in me, and she really encouraged me, and I'm very thankful.
I miss her. I will always miss her. I miss our talks, and I miss the time we spent together.
Thanks again, Lynn, for my first ever introduction to outlining. You really helped me out. You were a great sister-in-law, and you are missed.
Thank you, Mrs. Veldof.
I miss you, Marilyn, and I love you.
I dearly miss her, and I miss all the good times that we had.
Yeah, she was a great grandmom, and I wish she was alive too. Well, I just wish she was alive, and I hope she's doing great in heaven. But yeah, this is my tribute.
How old are you?
How old are you, Lynn? Lynn, how old are you?